We're going to start with the worst addiction known to man,
Okay.
and that is porn addiction. The reason for this is, one, the availability of it. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
If I want to drink, I need to go and buy some, alcohol from an alcohol store. If I want to get drugs, I need to find a drug dealer.
Right.
If I want to watch porn, I can pull up my phone right now and start watching it.
Right.
Now, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Because not only that, but it's my belief, after also dealing with drug addiction, that pornography addiction creates an emotional cycle, which is the most erratic emotional cycle that you'll experience. So let's go through it for a second, and then I'll actually start talking about my story, because this is going to be it's what I believe is actually the real addiction.
Okay.
It's the addiction to guilt and shame.
Interesting.
Because this is what happens. You feel turned on, sexually aroused.
Okay.
Then you're going to get on the computer. Once you get on the computer, you now start pulling up tabs. Dopamine is firing while you're doing so. You might choose to open up multiple tabs of different scenes of all sorts of different things that you can find in the porn world.
Right.
Again, dopamine, 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 dopamine. Then you choose whatever scene that you want to do the thing you want to do to, and you experience an orgasm, ecstasy. And then right afterwards, you feel guilty for doing so, as if you should have been doing something else, or, hey, I told myself I wasn't going to do this anymore. Right. And then you feel shame. Yeah. Because I can't actually follow the words that I say I'm going to do for myself.
Interesting.
So now we're talking. Now this isn't, and this is how I talk about how do we heal guys from porn addiction for good? Because I don't give a crap about the actual addictive behavior. It's the emotional cycle, because you can do the same thing with social media, with video games, with drinking, with alcohol, with drugs, with any of this. Yeah. Just interchange it out, because if you still have this emotional cycle, your identity is going to attach itself to whatever else it can to get the dopamine. Yeah. Now let me go into my story.
Okay, yeah, break it down.
When I was 14, this is 2000.
Okay.
So we were just moving from dial-up internet and AOL to broadband. And broadband was this new world where everything goes really fast. And something else happened, is that porn started to be thrown onto the internet, and video pornography specifically, which is completely different from something you're going to see in a magazine. So 14-year-old kid with his own computer in the basement, no fault to my parents at all. We were just well off enough as a upper middle class white family to have all these things that were nice to have. So I started diving into porn when I was 14.
Okay. Which I think we can all agree, damn near every dude at some point has gone through this. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was so cool to see it clear, because before it was just the fuzzies on Cinemax. Yeah. I was like, whoa, I can actually see what I'm looking at now. Yeah. So I started when I was 14. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to the time I was in college. Okay. Because I was doing this pretty consistently. Sure. Right? So once I got into college, I started to have more opportunities to have sex with women. And I was finding that I was struggling doing so. As in, it was a struggle for me to achieve an erection as a 20-year-old. I didn't understand what was happening.
Interesting.
I ended up getting out and starting to figure out, okay, what can I do about this? Because I was also experiencing a lot of anxiety and fear once the first time it happened, right? So now I'm starting to map something into my subconscious that I'm actually afraid of sexual intimacy. So then I start using Viagra, Cialis, again, at a very young
20s.
Age. Yeah, we're talking about in my 20s.
Yeah.
And that worked for a time being, but guess what? As I'm still doing this, I am still watching porn very consistently. And not only that, but every time that I would fail with a woman, it would drive me back to porn, because I had created safety around pornography. I had no problem getting an erection, opening up my laptop and being ready for that. Yeah. I had a problem with actual human connection. So fast forward to when I was 26 or 27, I met my ex-wife. Okay. And at the time, we had such a strong, energetic connection that I actually didn't really have a desire to watch porn during that time. Now I was still using Viagra, Cialis, things like this to actually have sex. Yeah. But it was like for the first 2 years, I was like, she healed me. You know what I mean? I was like, this whole relationship healed me. But what happens after about 2 years in a relationship? Anybody that's been in one for long enough knows that that's where the real work actually gets done. Yeah. The honeymoon phase is over, and it's time to actually look each other in the eye and say, hey, there's some things that you do that I would like for you to improve. Yeah. Hey, and also there's some things that I can improve on, right? And then the work is done to create a lasting relationship. Yeah. Well, that work can't be done if you're hiding a whole portion of yourself. So the way that I describe this now is that it is love is only genuine when two people are courageous enough to be fully seen, fully heard, to be fully loved. But a lot of times, especially as guys, when it comes to things that we're shameful about, we'll hide it.
Right.
It's like we're living two lives. So if you were to imagine two circles, and then the guy has his circle, but then there's this whole little small circle that he's withholding, and the woman's fully transparent. Not saying that the woman's always this way. I'm just saying in this scenario.
Sure.
And then the woman falls in love with the projection of the man, not the whole man. So what happens over time? You can't hide the thing from your wife for that long. You live in the same space. Like, you're going to fuck up.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what happened.
Right.
She started catching me watching porn. And then also I started to experience what's called porn-induced erectile dysfunction again. And then that created a bigger division. And at this point, I had been telling myself since I was about 25, there was a voice inside of me coming from my heart space saying, you keep saying things to yourself like, what's wrong with you? Are you always going to be this way? Why can't you be like other guys? This voice says, bro, it's the porn. You need to stop watching porn.
Yeah.
So I had this duality of knowing, but I kept watching it. And I felt out of control of my mind and my body. I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
So once we get into there, me and my ex-wife started having issues. I started diving into drugs. So I'm getting into party drugs. Things are manufacturing happiness, right?
Okay, well, break that down for me then, right?
Sure.
Like, take me through this thought process where you go from porn to drugs. Like,
Well,
what was it that connected those two?
Well, first, I mean, I started smoking marijuana when I was 20, 21.
Sure.
Now, where I sit right now, I still smoke weed occasionally. Like, I don't see anything wrong with it, but I was using it. Again, it's the intention of use to numb myself, right? And that's what it was being intentionally used for. Well, then the pain got so much, and again, I didn't want to admit that I was this, right? I didn't want to admit that I was a porn addict. I didn't want to admit that I was holding all these feelings of inadequacy and shame and guilt. I was just hiding all these things. So because I couldn't face myself, it drove me even further away from things that I needed or what I felt like I needed to manufacture happiness in my life. So then that spiraled us down a whole path, because if anybody has done drugs in that way, especially like MDA and cocaine, you pretty much make yourself willingly bipolar, especially if you're doing it on the weekend all the time.
Yeah.
MDMA is a very powerful drug when it comes to releasing dopamine and serotonin, and then your whole stories are like done for the next 2 or 3 days, where you're kind of like slightly depressed. So I was doing this to myself on a weekend, like go party on the weekend, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, feeling depressed, sad, crying, then back to the drugs, right? And the cycle just continued.
Yeah.
Well, that erratic behavior also contributed to my ex-wife at one point finally saying, hey, if something doesn't change, I'm going to leave. Now, here's the kicker, because here's the actual story of me coming out about my pornography addiction, but I actually say that I was forced out. So my ex-wife had found the porn, right, on my phone. Right. And me and her actually had a business at the time. We were doing health and fitness coaching and bodybuilding coaching together. So we're leaving the gym, and she grabs my hand. She says, I have something to talk to you about. So I was like, well, what? She's like, let's go to the car. So we go to the car. And she gets my phone and she says, I need to show you something. She goes to my in private browsing, which is where I was doing all my shit that I was doing, right? Pulls it up. And by the way, anybody that's listening right now, if you search the same thing over and over again, even in private browsing, it'll save your searches. Yeah. So she hits the search bar. These different searches come down. She says, what's this? I said, it wasn't me. She said, this is your phone.
Yeah.
This is who else could it be?
Yeah.
My phone got hacked. Wasn't me. If you don't tell me the truth right now, I'm going to walk out of this car and I'm not going to be with you anymore. My first initial reaction still, it wasn't me.
Really?
Until I started breaking down crying and actually admitting it.
Yeah.
So when I talk about this, I mean, like, literally it was forced out of me.
Yeah.
I was given an ultimatum. And it's one ultimatum that I'm grateful for that happened in my life.
Yeah.
Because at that point forward, we had a very tumultuous time. I had to spend Thanksgiving alone. Like, I thought she was going to leave. Then she was like, hey, let's start working through this together. I was like, okay. So I went through the process of going to a sex therapist and anxiety therapist, talk about these things. The sex therapist said, you need to go 90 days, nothing, no sex, no jacking off, no porn, no nothing. Now,
so like a cleanse then.
Yeah, it's a process in which, again, neuroplasticity allows you to map certain neurons to a reaction, to an action, right? So I had mapped literally being sexually aroused to a computer.
Yeah, right.
Rather than being sexually aroused to a woman.
Right.
So the 90 days was allowing my brain to rewire itself. Very tough 90 days.
Yeah.
And then after about 120 days, I had sex with my ex-wife for the first time without the use of any pill or anything.
For the first time?
For the first time.
Wow.
No, I had been, like in the first parts of our relationship, I had been able to do so.
Okay, gotcha.
But
it
like,
had been a while.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Right? And then about 4 months later, she left me.
Wow.
Now, why did she leave me? She left me because there are different MAP behaviors around addiction that isn't just the addiction. Because when you're addicted to something and you want to hide it, you will lie, you'll manipulate, you'll control the situation so that you don't see my dark little secret. And that's what I did. But guess what? I was so proud, my ego puffed itself up and was like, man, I'm so proud of myself for getting over the addiction, that I was still lying, I was still manipulating, I was still controlling her. And that's ultimately what had her leave. Then I sat in there for about a month with her being gone, and I'm just sitting in straight victim mode, blaming, complaining, blah, 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 blah. Which I always say, guys, like, bring this with you.
Yeah.
Victimhood has two attributes, blaming and complaining. If you find yourself blaming and complaining about anything, you are literally being victimized by whatever else you're blaming and complaining about. So what happened for me was a month later, I heard a voice inside of me, and it said, what would happen if you took 100% responsibility for what you're blaming and complaining your wife for? I said, I've never done that before. I'm going to try that out. And from that point forward, I consider that a rebirth into me actually creating the life that I truly want to create by just understanding what responsibility is. And I'm not talking about responsibility for your actions. I'm talking about responsibility for your thoughts and your emotions and your reactions and your entire fucking life. It's your responsibility.
Yeah.